is already here, but whatever, we'll record it anyway. All right, maybe some of you guys need to just, something to put you to sleep in the evenings. All right, so the Sepoy Mutiny. The Sepoy Mutiny is the rebellion of Indians against the British East India Trading Company. Okay, it happens in 1847. I'm sorry, 1857. Sorry, 1857, and it's the rebellion of Indians against British rule, against the British East India Trading Company. Okay, we don't need to get into a lot of details about it. We don't need a lot of details here. What you do need is that the mutiny has its origins in Hindu versus Muslim conflict. Hindu versus Muslim conflict. There's actually argument about like the Hindus start like dipping their bullets into pig fat and stuff, so that when they kill a Muslim with a bullet that has pig fat on it, the Muslims will go to hell because they're not allowed to eat pig. There's like a lot of that kind of stuff that's going on in here, and it causes this big fight. Okay, the Muslims are being supported by the British, and the Hindus are the rebels. The Hindus are fighting against them. A sepoy is the name of the soldier. Sepoy is a soldier, a type of Indian soldier. And the Indian soldiers are supposed to be working for the British, but they turn on the British. Okay, they turn on the Brits, and we're going to get this conflict. The conflict breaks in along this like Hindu-Muslim line. Hindu-Muslim line. What matters the most here is that it's going to create a sense of national identity for the Indians. Okay, it's going to matter for two reasons. The first one is this national identity for the Indians. One of the examples of the national identity for the Indians is Rani of Jhansi. Rani of Jhansi. Have any of my Indian guys, have any of you guys heard of Rani of Jhansi before?
Yeah.
Yeah, Rahul, who is she?
She is a queen.
I don't think she's a queen.
Well, I just heard a character in a Bollywood movie reference her.
Okay, I do think she's a princess. I think if I remember correctly, but I don't think she was a queen. I don't think she was a queen. Yash, Drew, do you guys know her? No. Okay, so I like to think of her as like a Joan of Arc type character, right? A Joan of Arc type person. She's a real person, right? Joan of Arc was a real person too. Rani of Jhansi is her nickname. Her actual name, Lakshmi Bai, is her actual name. But she's from Jhansi. She becomes Rani of Jhansi. And so she very famously becomes this warrior who is going to unify a bunch of the Hindu soldiers, and they're going to be fighting in this fort, and she's going to be defending the fort and fighting off the British, and she's going to do it with her baby on her back, right? The baby on the back, and the baby gets killed in the rebellion. The baby gets killed, and so does she. And she gets killed, but just like Joan of Arc, she becomes this like noble sacrifice, right? Where Joan of Arc becomes a martyr for French identity, Rani of Jhansi is going to become a martyr for Indian identity. A very similar kind of thing that happened here, right? That as this mother defending her child, so too will the new India be born, right? That the mother of the new India will be born. Anyway, the first thing that's important is this idea of Indian identity. We have to remember that India is not a unified place. It's got lots of languages, lots of cultures, lots of religions, lots of diversity, right? It's not unified, so you have to manufacture that identity. You have to decide that you want it to be unified and make the identity unified, right? Okay, the next thing that matters here is it's the end of the British East India Company, and it's the beginning of the British Raj. The beginning of the British Raj. So Raj means to rule, right? To rule, or Raja is a king, right? So to rule India, this is direct control of the British government. From this point forward, the British are going to be in direct control of India. They're no longer using their company to do it because their company wasn't very good. Like it wasn't working very well. Okay. So the British Raj is direct rule. Now, 1858, the British move in, they take it over, and we're going to be faced with our first real problem with British rule, right? The first really big problem with British rule is how do you get this many people to rule this many people, right? Like teeny tiny little rock in the Northern Atlantic is trying to rule big giant India, right? How do you do that? Yash, how do you do it?
We said like divide and conquer last time, so
Yeah. So they're going to do divide and conquer. And again, they're going to give money, wealth, and power to the minorities, right? The Sikhs and the Muslims. Okay. But in this case, they're also going to cut a deal with the Indians. They're basically going to convince the Indians that this is something closer to a partnership, right? That it's not conquering, it's a partnership, right? And so the British basically try to sell it to the Indians and say that and tell the Indians that they're going to be able to make money off of this. They're going to make money. They're going to be able to, rise up. They're going to be a part of this great empire, this global network of business interests and stuff, right? They're trying to sell it to the Indians to convince the Indians to go along with it, right? So you do have to do divide and conquer. That is true. You do have to do that, but that still doesn't, India still has too many people, right? Even dividing and conquering India still is hundreds of millions of people, right? At this point, okay? India is just so big that you still have to do this. So they're going to try to sell the Brits or sell the Indians on this. That's going to bite them in the butt in just a moment here, right? There's one thing we have to notice, and this map here looks like it's a melted rainbow sherbet, right? It's like a mix of colors and stuff. This matters because it's going to indicate what kind of rule India is going to go under. Okay, so India is going to be divided up into these two different kinds of states. First is the yellow areas. The yellow areas are going to be called British India, and it's going to be direct control. It's going to be direct control. Now, this is a very difficult map to draw, right? I don't expect you to draw this, but you can visualize this if you want. Write it in your notes. The areas of India under direct control, it means they're going to have white people at the top. So you're going to have white people like in the governor's mansions. So you'll have a white person at the top, and you're going to have a handful of white staff at the top as well, right? Maybe like the top, say 50 spots are going to be held by white people. 50, maybe 100 spots or so. It depends on how big the place is, right? So direct rule. These areas, generally speaking, are going to be wealthier. They're going to be wealthier. They're going to have more people. They're going to be more densely populated. They're going to be wealthy. They're going to be linguistically unified. So they'll all be speaking one language in the area. And wealthier, more dense, linguistically unified. And they're also going to be connected to international trade, more directly connected to international trade. Now, the pink areas of the map, all these different pink areas, these pink areas are what we call the princely states. The princely states. The princely states are like semi-autonomous. This is where oftentimes what you'll have is the person at the top will be an Indian. The person at the top, like the person ruling Hyderabad will be an Indian ruling at the top, and he's paying the white people, basically. He's paying tribute to the whites. So these are going to be, generally speaking, local control. Local control, these are generally going to be areas of lower population or lower value land, right? They're going to be less densely populated for the most part. The land won't be as good. It won't be as valuable, particularly for growing things. It's going to be generally bad plantation land, like growing land. Okay. Oh, the other thing is these princely states oftentimes, the princely states have negotiated this ahead of time, right? So they've negotiated this ahead of time. This would be like Hyderabad is a good example of this, or Baluchistan is another good example, where they've negotiated with the British early. Like during the Sepoy Mutiny, they sided with the British, and they sided with the British during the rebellion, and then like negotiated better terms, right? So you're not going to get a lot of like Hindu rule, right? The Hindus, generally speaking, are going to be in these yellow areas. A lot of these yellow areas are going to be the most densely area. These United Provinces, this whole area through here, by far and away is the most densely populated part of the country, right? The entire United States population is in like this zone right here today, right? So it's very, very densely populated. Okay. All right. Do we have questions about these? The reason why we're spending time on this is in the future, what will happen is when India becomes independent, one of the challenges that Indian democracy is going to face is what do you do with all these like semi-autonomous regions? What do you do with these regions that have been ruling themselves for a while? They speak a smaller language, right? Not one of the big languages, right? These are all Hindi speakers up here, right? So what are you going to do with these people down here that are speaking some completely different language, right? Like, what do you do with those people? And so the solution is that in the 1940s and the 1950s, after India gets its independence, they're going to have to negotiate all the terms with all these different groups, are going to come in with all these different negotiations. Some of them are going to just join right away. Some of them are going to be like negotiating how they're going to join. Others have to be invaded, right? The Indians are going to actually invade Hyderabad, right? And so some of them are going to split. Pakistan is going to just leave, right? So these areas are just going to leave, and same with Bengal, what will become Bangladesh, right? So this is all part of the negotiation at the end that they're trying to figure out what to do. Cool? Cool. All right. So what is England, what is the UK doing to India? Generally speaking, what they're doing is they're creating a plantation system. So the economics of India is going to be a plantation system. And this is going to get another point of conflict that we're going to see. A big point of conflict for the Indians is whether or not, or I'm sorry, a point of conflict for the Brits, for the British, are to what extent do you have to control India, and to what extent can you let India kind of be itself? The Brits are going to follow what we call laissez-faire economics. That's a term you should know. You guys should know laissez-faire, right? Wental, help us out. What is laissez-faire economics?
It's free market. Just
Yeah.
the companies can do what they want.
Exactly. Yeah, for the most part. Basically, it's free market. You can do what you want to do, essentially, right? Hands off, laissez-faire means hands off, right? So it's a free market system. England wants India to be a laissez-faire system. This is their goal. They want India to be laissez-faire. Again, they can't. Okay, so they want it to be laissez-faire because they want the Indians to be invested in this. They want the Indians growing these crops, and they want the Indians to want to grow these crops, right? And they want them to sell them. Unfortunately, not all the Indians agree, so they have to go into what we call Dutch style control. The Dutch style control, named after the way that the Dutch are ruling over Indonesia at this time, is basically almost slavery. This is direct, like authoritarian rule, using violence, direct control, something almost slavery. This is how the Dutch are running Indonesia at the time. And at this point in history, Indonesia is the most valuable colony on the planet. Indonesia is producing so much stuff and so much wealth that the Netherlands by itself, itty bitty, teeny tiny Netherlands, is like the fifth richest country on the planet, fourth or fifth richest country on the planet because of that. England is trying to do that. Okay. The problem with this, laissez-faire economics produces larger numbers overall, right? If we can get all of the Indians invested in this idea, they will make way, 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 way more money, right? The problem is, if you give them independence, they're going to want more independence, right? Like it's harder to enforce the rules on there. The Dutch style, the British are able to maximize their money, but you have a ceiling. You're never going to get that much because you're enforcing everything through violence, right? So you're never going to get, you're going to max out productivity at a fairly low number. That's one problem. The other problem is India has more backs than Britain has whips, right? Like, can this many people whip the backs of this many people? That's very hard to do. Very, very hard to do. Okay, so this is a real problem. Britain basically convinces or forces the Indians to grow cash crops all across the entire country. The entire country is basically turned into cash crops. Some of it's going to be spices, those sweet, sweet spices that Europeans are constantly looking for. So some of it will be spices. Some of it is going to be indigo, like the dye. And a large portion, a very, very large portion of it is going to be cotton. India is actually going to become one of the leading, it'll become second only to the United States in cotton production in this time period. And England at this time doesn't want to buy its cotton from the United States anymore because it doesn't want to support slavery in the United States, right? And a lot of the European countries don't want to support slavery. And so this is actually going to be one of the causes of the US Civil War, is that Indian cotton production rises. And as Indian cotton production rises, the market gets flooded. And so the price of cotton crashes, which is going to cause the economic scare of 1859, which is going to be one of the causes of the US Civil War, right? So this is, if you're wondering how we can blame the British for the US Civil War, well, here you go. This is how, right? Okay. The other thing that Britain doesn't anticipate is that with laissez-faire economics, they're going to increase a massive out-migration of Indians. Okay, a massive emigration from India. And that's what this map is on my screen, right? These circles are going to represent the number of Indians that are going to move outside of India at this time period. And they're going to move to all these different areas of the world. A massive, massive outflux of Indians moving around, okay? And this is because India has a ton of people, but its economy is very, very weak. It's very small. It's not very well organized, right? And so a lot of those people just aren't productive. And so they're going to look for jobs and they're going to move to other places looking for jobs, okay? This is going to create the diaspora. You need the word Indian diaspora. So you're going to create the Indian diaspora around the world, D-I-A-S-P-O-R-A, diaspora. Have you heard that word before? About half of seventh period knew the word and the other half didn't. Do you guys know the word diaspora? Michael, you know it? What is it?
I heard it. I feel like I just need some context to know what it means. I don't know. I can't define.
All right, Drew, what you got, man?
Isn't it just like pretty much an exodus, kind of?
Well, it's not the exodus. It's the diaspora is the population of people that are geographically removed from their hearth, right? So it's the population of people that are geographically removed from their homeland. Okay, the word originally is a Jewish word because once the Jews got driven out of the Middle East by the Muslims, the Jews didn't have a homeland; they had a diaspora because they were spread out all over Europe in all the cities of Europe, and so it was called diaspora. Today we use the word diaspora not just for Jewish people, but we use it for any kind of immigrant population, right? So Dhruv, Rahul, and Yash, you guys are all part of the Indian diaspora, right? You're of Indian descent, you're connected to Indian culture in some ways, maybe language, maybe whatever, food, dance, whatever. Yasha's or Rahul's watching Bollywood movies and stuff, right? You guys are connected to Indian culture, but you're not Indian. Okay, you're part of the diaspora. Does that make sense? You guys with me on that? Right? Okay. Where Ilha, Wentao, and Michael, are you guys all Chinese? Are you guys the Chinese diaspora? Or where are you from? I don't know where you're from.
I am.
Oh yeah. Where Huang, Ilha, Wentao, where are you guys?
I'm from Korea. South
I'm
Korea.
Chinese.
Korea, Chinese, okay. Yeah. Tiffany, I'm assuming you're from China, right? Is that right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. The great Zamudio family of China. So anyway, but you guys get the idea, okay? Why do we care about this? We care because large populations of Indians who live around the world are going to keep in connection with the Indians living in India. That connection's going to stay open, okay? And they're going to be using what in the 19th century would be, a 19th century Twitter feed, which would be mail ships, right? Ships, sending the mail. And we're going to also connect like telegrams, eventually the telephone, okay? It means that the Indians in India are going to have a connection to the entire world, and they're going to have a constant influx of new ideas and concepts that are going to be coming into their country, including things like human rights and governed by consent and democracy and socialism and communism and progressive values, right? All of those things, the British don't know this, but by creating this system, they're basically dooming their colony, right? India is going to constantly have an influx of information that is going to fuel that rebellion. Whoops. Sorry, Brits. All right. So here's the last thing we're going to do today, the Indigo Rebellion, okay? The Indigo Rebellion, 1858 to 1860. At this moment in history, the Indigo Rebellion doesn't seem like a big deal, but looking back, we can tell that it definitely was. Okay, so this is the areas of Bengal. Today we would call this like Assam, right? So this is that area of India that reaches out on the side over across Bangladesh, if you can picture India in your mind, right? Is this area over here. What is today Bangladesh and this farming area over here, right? India is reaching out across Bangladesh, okay? All right, the British made this entire region grow indigo. The dye, it makes blue dye, right? Anything you wear that's blue is using indigo as a dye. Indigo is one of these crops that's like really, really picky. It can really only exist in just like a handful of areas on the planet, right? And as it turns out, Bengal is like one of the best places in the world to grow indigo. And so the Brits convinced the Indians to grow indigo. But you have to do it with a cash crop, which means you're growing your cash crop, but you're not growing food, right? So the Bengalis look at this and they say, wait, hold on a minute. What are we going to eat? The British say, hey, don't worry about it, man. You're going to make so much money that you'll be able to buy any food you want. All you need to do is just grow as much indigo as you can possibly grow, and you'll be fine, right? Now, I think you guys can already anticipate the problem, right? What do you think the problem is going to be? Raul, what do you think the problem is going to be?
They're going to starve
They are, of course, going to starve. Why are they going to starve?
because they're not actually growing any food, and they're not actually going to be able to use all the money from the indigo to buy all the food that they want.
Yes, we're going to run into two big problems. Problem number one, the British don't pay them. or pay them very, very little. The British end up paying less than 1/10 of what they promise. Okay. The British pull a bunch of shenanigans on here where they say, oh, we have to have a harvesting tax and we're going to ship it. So we're going to take 20% off for shipping it and we're going to sell it. So we'll take another 30% off for selling it, right? Like all that kind of stuff. So the British are going to pull a bunch of shenanigans and pay almost nothing. Okay. The next problem is that the British don't actually grow food anywhere. They're not going to grow food. The parts of India, they declare these parts of India over here are going to grow food, but those parts of India that are designated as food growing areas don't have rivers and don't have land and can't grow any food. And so India is going to go into a cycle of famine and starvation that is going to stay all the way until the 1950s. This means that India is going to go into an all-out famine every 5 or 6 years. So they're not paid any money, which doesn't really matter because there's no food to buy. All right, so you guys can anticipate this problem, of course. The farmers are going to rebel. Biswanath Sardar is going to be one of the leaders. He is promptly executed. The British re-invade this area. Okay, my boy Harish Chandra Mukherjee, he's going to be running a newspaper and stuff there. Hold on a sec. I'm in the middle of my Zoom class. Can I call you back? Yeah. Mukherjee, he's going to be running the newspapers there, my boy. He's going to be keeping this going and stuff. He will eventually die of like a heart attack. Anyway, these are like the two leaders. The British re-invade Bengal, and they re-invade Bengal with like 10 times more troops than they had before. They execute a whole bunch of farmers and they force the farmers to start growing again. And they force the farmers to go into direct control. This is that Dutch control. This is where the British tried using laissez-faire in the beginning, kind of, and then they have to come in with the Dutch style control, right? Why do we care about this? We care for a couple of reasons. Number one, we care because this is the first time that the regular people of India were rising against the British. These guys are just farmers. They're not trained soldiers. They're not, they're not anything else. These are just farmers, okay? It also, number two, exposes the lies of the British. This is what my boy Mukherjee is going to say in his newspapers, is that the lies of the British are exposed. First, the British lied that they would have enough food. They lied that they would pay them as much, right? He says that the British lie. The second thing he says is that the British are going to use their troops against our regular people anytime we try to rebel. He's going to try to expose that to the idea that the Indians are not partners. It is not an equal relationship. This is not a relationship of partners. It is a relationship of a subject, of a ruler over a subject. The last thing this matters here is because the Indigo Rebellion is going to become one of these points of conflict that is going to unify Indians against England. Because the last truth that Mukherjee says is that the only way Indians can get what they want is by unifying themselves. This is going to be one of our earliest examples of people calling for unity. Okay? Do we understand? Do you guys have problems, questions, comments? No? We're good? Okay. If you guys don't have anything else, I think I've got schedules for all of you guys. Ilha, did I get a schedule from you yet? Okay, so everyone but Ilha is ready to go. You guys, everyone but Ilha, you guys can go. Ilha, let's